Hi family, friends. It's been a while. I thought I'd do another video. Hope you've been doing well. Here it is, October the 28th, almost the end of October, and we're still in short sleeves here. It's been crazy weather. Last year I was wearing my fuzzy pants and I was feeling really good. And this year they're almost too hot. Been working, been staying busy. I always tell you about my plants, so I'll tell you how that's been. I heard the temperature was supposed to be down around 38, so I said, well, it's a good time to bring them in. It was right after my birthday, and so I brought them in, and a few days later I was like, it's really warm outside. They'd probably enjoy it. And so I checked the weather for the next few days. It was going to be in the 60s. I said, oh yeah, they can definitely go outside. So I brought them back outside and they've been enjoying it. My English climbing ivy was really long. They had really long legs on them, and I cut off four of the plants had really long legs. They've done really well this summer. They've enjoyed their life. Maybe because I was breathing on them so much from the back deck when we were having our shutdown. But anyway, so I got them ready and I trimmed them up and brought them in, and now they're back outside again. I've been keeping my eye on the weather reports, make sure it's not going to be down in the 30s again. Because if it gets that cold again, I will bring them in. I did take out my other tomato plant that was on the back deck and never got any blooms. No fruits on that one. Now the one downstairs, that was the Golden Jubilee that was that way. I probably won't try that one again until I have actual dirt to put it in, not just a pot. On my cherry tomato, it's still got 3 tomatoes left that are still green. Right now, 3 of them are red in various stages of redding up, getting ready to be picked. The one downstairs is really surprising. That was the Mr. Stripey. I put it down there because I didn't think it was doing as well back here as the other 2. So it's been down there, and I got a tomato on it. It's probably about this big around, and it's got a funny looking red tomato on it. It was like started making one, and then there was one underneath it, and they're together, so you can see where they were divided. And I saw the other one the other night. Nowhere near big enough to put on a sandwich. In fact, I'm sure that one's quite rotten. But today, we got some rain and storms last night from, I guess, a hurricane that calmed down to a tropical storm. I think it is tropical storm. It's not beta. I think we're on zeta now. We're going through the Greek alphabet. They went through the English ones already. They had Spanish storms already, and now they're using the Greek alphabet. They had I didn't remember hearing about alpha, but there was beta, and now we're on zeta, wherever that is. There's 26 letters in the alphabet, and if you want to know what they are, you just go to Revelation, the last book of the Bible, chapter 1, verse 7, verse 8. Verses 7 and 8 are some of my favorite verses in the Bible. And it's Jesus talking, and he says, I am Alpha and Omega. Alpha's the A, and Omega is like our Z, so A to Z. Some more literal translations will say A to Z. So I haven't done a video in a while, and I just wanted to catch up. So now you know about our crazy weather. So it rained, and then it got sunny, and the wind's been blowing. I've been sitting out here on the back deck for a few hours. I did a late devotional because we had a couple places to go. And then, so I was doing my devotional and just catching up on my emails. Do that about once a day. So last time I read you about baby Moses, and in the order of the books, we're ready for Samuel the Little Priest. I'm back to volume 2, reading Samuel the Little Priest. Remember, this is the book I started with back in April, Jesus in the Storm. So That's comes to mind every time we have a storm. I think about that story. So in the Israelites, so Moses grew up and he led the children of Israel that when in Joseph's time he came down to Egypt because of the famine. Remember? There was a famine and they came to live in Egypt. Well, the Pharaoh that was over Egypt died, and Joseph and his brothers died and everything. His family was living in the land of Goshen, which was a really nice, really fertile land. It was very beautiful. It was paradise to them because they'd left Canaan, which was their promised land, but because of the famine, it wasn't so promised anymore. So they were living in Goshen. Well, the Pharaoh died that knew Joseph, and probably a couple pharaohs down the line, you'll read in the Bible in Exodus, it said there came a Pharaoh that didn't know Joseph. Now, he was written in history. He saved the then pretty much modern world, saved Egypt, the whole country, from famine because of the ideas that God gave him. So this Pharaoh did not forget. He knew, but he didn't want to know the God. So they ended up putting the children of Israel into slavery. For 430 years they were in slavery. And then we read about baby Moses, how he was born. We don't know what name his parents named him, but the princess named him Moses because she drew him out of the water. And he went and lived in the princess's palace. He studied military operations. That's how he was able to have the camp set up the way it was when they were traveling through the wilderness. Well, they finally made it to Egypt after a lot. In fact, I'm reading through a Bible plan called the Torah, and I'm in Numbers, and they're just going through a lot. I just finished reading the chapter where Miriam died, Moses' sister. Remember, she was the one that watched him by the riverside while his little basket boat was in the bulrushes. She watched over him there. And his brother Aaron, remember Aaron was the priest. So they died in Numbers 20. So they finally got into the promised land. Moses ended up dying there as well. And Joshua led the people into the promised land. Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho. Well, they planted the temple at a place called Shiloh. And the people, if you've read the Bible at all, especially during the Kings, you find that the people, they forget about God. They start worshiping idols. A country comes in and takes over them. Excuse me. They get enslaved. They pray to God. They're in trouble. They know God's the only way out, so they pray to God. He saves them. They get rescued. Everything's okay, and then they go back to idols. It's just a vicious cycle. You'd think they'd have learned, but they didn't. So at this time, there was a couple. You're going to find this story in 1 Samuel 1-3. We find this couple, this man named Elkanah, and he's married to 2 women. Now, remember back when Jacob married Leah, he was tricked into marrying Leah, but he also married Rachel, who he really wanted to marry. And that household was not a happy household. Abraham, he didn't marry Hagar, but he had a child by her, and Ishmael made fun of Isaac, and that bothered Sarah. So there was a 2-wife thing, a 2-wife home there, and whenever 2 women are in the home, it doesn't work out. Even King Solomon said, it is better to live in the corner on the rooftop of a house than live with a contentious woman. Well, he would have known. He had 700 wives. That was way too many. He took it a bit too far. And 300 concubines. He could go almost 4 years without seeing the same woman again. Got a bee being friendly. So, well, I think the way this happened is Elkanah married Hannah because he loved her very much. It was a very loving relationship. But after a few years, it was obvious Hannah was unable to have any children. So he married this woman named Peninnah, however you pronounce it. I know Hannah's a lot easier to say than Peninnah. So Peninnah had several children. She probably had at least 5. Families were big back then. The children helped. Boys got the house. They usually took care of their sisters. The story of Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. It doesn't mention the parents. Probably the parents died, and Lazarus as being the son. Maybe the only son, but perhaps the oldest. He was taking care of his sisters, Mary and Martha. They kept house for him. Why none of them were married, or none of their spouses are mentioned, we don't know. But so the children were the girls. The fathers wanted to marry them off, get good husbands for them, and the sons to take over the household and take care of the parents. They didn't have nursing homes back then. So they had to have, the children also took care of the parents when they got old. Well, Hannah wanted children, and Peninnah made fun of her because she couldn't have children. And this hurt Hannah very badly. Well, the temple was set up at Shiloh, and I was going to show you a picture. They don't have a picture of the outside of it. And I was going to see if they had, but they don't. So they went every year to the tabernacle to sacrifice. I guess once everybody got to the promised land, here's where the temple was, and everybody lived in the outlying areas. It's just really far away. So they came once a year to sacrifice. Well, every year, Hannah was crying, and her husband said, why are you crying over not having any children? Am I not better than 10 sons? Well, she loved her husband. See, this is one of the ways that we see that they loved each other very much. And he had given her a good portion of the meat, and of course Peninnah was making fun of her. But she couldn't eat, so she went into the temple and she knelt down and she prayed. She poured her heart out to God. Have you ever just been so heartbroken, you're crying, your heart feels like it's broken, you just pouring your heart out to God? This is what she did, and she didn't do it loudly. She wasn't a drama queen, you could say. She wasn't a drama queen. She was just praying over this, and she said, God, basically she's praying and said, God, I want a baby so bad. And if you give me a son, I will dedicate him back to you, and he will serve you all the days of his life. Well, while she was praying this prayer, the high priest, there's a picture of him here, Eli was his name. He had a couple of children, Hophni and Phinehas. That's the way I pronounce their names. If you don't like it, that's okay. So he had 2 sons, and they were not good priests. They're all the tribe of Levi. Remember, Levi was the only ones that took care of the tabernacle. So he had not taught them very well. Well, he knew how people were not treating the Lord's tabernacle very well. And he saw this woman kneeling there, and her lips were moving, but she wasn't saying anything. And he thought she was drunk, because I guess he saw a lot of this. He saw the world had deteriorated, and what his sons had done, they had not helped. So he goes over to her and says, "Woman, you should take your drunkenness outside of the house of outside of the house of God." Basically, she had come to church to pray, to pour out her heart to God, which is the best place to do it. If you're going to pour your heart out to God, church is the one place you should be able to go and do that. And the pastor should not be able, or should not tell you that you can't do that, because that's pretty much what Eli was. He was the pastor. He was the go-between between God and the people. And that is what our pastors are today. Well, she said, I am not drunk. I'm pouring my heart out to God. But she never told him what she was praying for. She merely said, I'm pouring my heart out to God. And he said, he was suddenly, this was suddenly hit him, right in the heart. And he thought, this is a sincere person. So he said, go your way, and may God grant you what you have asked. So Hannah gets up, she leaves church, and she goes back to the meal that she's eating. And she goes home, they finish up their sacrifices, they go home the next day, and in a year she has a baby. So sure enough, now they didn't have bottles back then. It's just the women breastfed. And I don't know how long they fed them for. It was probably a lot more than today, because women back then, they took care of the home. They didn't worry about going out and doing anything else unless they were a woman of ill repute. They loved their children. They nurtured them. She may not have taken him in to Eli until he was 5 years old. I would imagine he was about 5. But we don't know. It doesn't say. It just said that when she weaned him, the next time they went to when he was old enough, the next time it was time for sacrifice, she and her husband brought little Samuel, which is what she named him. It means asked of God. I've had a couple of friends named Samuel. And one of them, after the mother and father, he was just a miracle that they were able to get pregnant, and she had him. And she said that she was in labor with him for 36 hours. And of course she couldn't have any more, but she named him Samuel, which means asked of God. So Eli is there, and they bring the child Samuel to Eli, and he says, What's going on here? And she said, you don't remember me, do you? This is Hannah talking. And he says, no. And she said, well, I'm the woman that cried, that you found me in church crying. I was pouring my heart out to God. And you told me that, you hoped that God would bring me what I was prayed for, and I prayed for this son, and I promised that I would dedicate him back to God, and here he is. I brought him back to be used in the service. Now, this was a big step on Hannah's part. Obviously, Elkanah was along with it. He may have been a little upset that she had done this. She said, I want a baby so bad that I was going to give him back to God. But by this time, he'd obviously gotten on board with it. But this was a big step in their faith because of the way Eli had already brought up his sons. She didn't know if Eli was going to bring up her son the way he'd done his. But she had prayed for Samuel, and I think she continued to pray for him as long as she was alive. And so she brought him to the temple, and there he was ministered. And she made him a coat every year too. So just because she wasn't around doesn't mean that she wasn't, paying attention. She probably took measurements of him and then said, okay, I need to make this a bit bigger. So she probably made it bigger. So he'd have a new robe every year when she came to visit him. So this brings us into Samuel, the little priest. Once there was a little boy named Samuel who was brought to the temple to live with priest Eli. Priest Eli took Samuel's hand and walked with him in the temple court. See, here's that big old altar of burnt offering where they sacrificed the sheep and the cows. Here's the big old basin where the priests wash, and you can see the priests kneeling. you can see this white kind of fencing that went all the way around the tabernacle. And then they had the main part inside. You can see the gold part. Must have been time for prayer because the priests are kneeling. And see, anybody could come in here. You had to bring your offering, but only the priests could go in here, which is, I believe Hannah was somewhere in this area praying. But I think Eli was sitting in the doorway so he could go and minister to those that needed his help. Samuel saw the evening fire burning on the altar. He saw the shiny wash basin and the cloth fence. He heard priests blowing trumpets and people praying. Yeah, here they are. They're blown. Well, they've just blown the trumpets here. The tiny bells on priest Eli's robe tinkled, tinkled, tinkled as Samuel and he walked together. There's little bells and pomegranates on his robe. The little red things are pomegranates. Tiny little pomegranates. If you've ever seen a pomegranate, it's funny because most fruits you eat the fruit and throw out the seeds, and a pomegranate you eat the seeds and throw out the rest of the skin. I always thought that was funny, but it's really good. Priest Eli and Samuel stopped at the temple door. Everything in the temple was made of gold. Look at this. Can you imagine a place made of gold? There was a golden table, a golden altar, so where priest Eli is praying in front of, a golden candlestick with 7 golden lamps. It's like the menorah is made after now. Eli's in front of the other one. Samuel watched as priest Eli went inside the temple to burn sweet-smelling incense on the golden altar and pray to God. Samuel hoped that someday God would choose him to be a priest like Eli. Then he would do God's special work in the temple. And there's where they're burning the incense. And on the other side of the altar of incense was the curtain, and on the other side of the curtain was the Ark of the Covenant. They had the pot of manna in there, Aaron's rod that budded, and either inside or on the side was the 10 Commandments. Samuel helped priest Eli with the temple work. Every morning he got up early to open the curtain doors of the temple. Would you like to have some curtains like that? Purple and, well, they're kind of red, blue, and white. These say that the curtains were purple, red, and blue, so. Samuel was a busy worker. He brought wood for the fire. He carried water for the shiny wash basin. He dusted the golden furniture. Can you imagine golden furniture getting dusty? Samuel helped priest Eli fill the 7 golden lamps with oil. The lamps must be kept burning all through the day, all through the night. The oil made the lamps burn with a yellow light. When it began to grow dark, Samuel closed the temple doors, and then came the time he liked best. It was the story time. See, this is the table of showbread. This is bread. I believe that was fresh every day, if not every few days. And here's the big old menorah, which is the candlestick. And Eli's pouring the oil in there. Samuel brought his favorite book and sat on a stool beside priest Eli. Samuel's book did not have pages to turn. It was a long, long piece of paper rolled into a roll called a scroll. Priest Eli unrolled the book and read him stories about Joseph and Moses and God. Much too soon the stories were over and it was time to go to bed. And here's a scroll, and here's a different one he's reading. Looks like a nice place. Some pillows there. He's even taken off his sandals. He's listening intently. Samuel said goodnight to priest Eli. He spread his bed out on the floor. Then he said his prayer and lay down to sleep. Priest Eli slept in a room nearby. If he needed anything in the night, he would call Samuel. This isn't like your bedroom. He didn't have much of a bed. He had a a roll that he had to roll up. Like a little sleeping bag with a pad. There's probably his water in the night, and Priest Eli is in here. Samuel went to sleep. He was sound asleep one night when a voice called, "Samuel." Samuel jumped up. He ran to Priest Eli. "Here I am, for you called me." See, he's on his way. He even forgot his slippers. And there's Eli. Looks like he's got the bed. Of course, he's older. Samuel's just a little boy. But Priest Eli said, "I did not call. Lie down again." Samuel went back and lay down. Before Samuel could go to sleep, the voice called again, "Samuel." Samuel jumped up quickly and ran to Priest Eli. "Here I am, for you called me." But Priest Eli said, "I did not call, my son. Lie down again." Samuel went slowly back to bed. He was sure someone had called him. He's confused. He said, What's going on here?" Eli's got him a little table with a pitcher of water and a glass. Nope. Almost before Samuel's head was on his pillow, the voice called again, "Samuel." Samuel jumped up and ran to Priest Eli. "Here I am, for you did call me." Then Priest Eli knew it must be God who was calling Samuel. He said, "Go lie down, and if he calls again, say, 'Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth.'" Once more Samuel lay down on his bed. He just doesn't know what's going on. If somebody's calling you, you're going to think it's the closest person to your vicinity. If somebody calls me, I'm going to think it's my husband, so I'm going to go in the house and I'm going to go inside or go see what he wants. And if he didn't say anything, then I'll tell him, "Well, I think I must be going crazy because I know I heard something." Samuel lay awake, listening. Then the voice called again, "Samuel, Samuel." Samuel sat up in bed. In almost a whisper he said, "Speak, for thy servant heareth." Here he is. He's listening. And you can see Eli's asleep in the other room on his bed. And God heard Samuel's whisper, because it was God that called him. God talked to Samuel and told him many things. God told Samuel he had chosen him to be a priest. This made Samuel happy. Now he wasn't just a little boy named Samuel. He was Samuel the little priest. And got the same picture on the back of the book. Got a little light beam around him. I know, I always thought he kind of looked like a girl, but that's just the way they cut their hair back then. Or didn't cut their hair. So, that's the story of Samuel. What God actually told Samuel in that, in the night, it wasn't a dream or visions. He actually talked to him, and he told them about what was going on in the country with Israel. And he said that Eli hadn't raised up his sons very well, and that they would die, and Eli also would die. So that was probably very hard for Samuel to relate to Eli, because the next morning, Eli wanted to know what was going on. So that's the story of Samuel the little priest. And I hope I haven't gone on too long. I hope you're having a good fall. I look forward to Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday because, I enjoy Christmas, but after Christmas, there's just cold weather and it's nasty and there's nothing to look forward to after that. But Thanksgiving, you still have Christmas to look forward to. So Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday, and that's when I usually see most of my family. I'm going to try and read you another story before then, but if I don't, I hope you have a good Thanksgiving, a safe holiday, and that you are staying safe and healthy and well, getting out and enjoying the unnaturally, seasonably, warm weather. Perhaps where you are, it's very nice. So I'm going to say goodbye now until the next video. Bye!